The story begins on a day where a young man named Elon found himself completely alone in the world. Upon arriving at his university campus, he walked through the classroom and the dining hall, but there was no one in any corner, not even in the hallways, and even upon returning home, he noticed the streets were disturbingly empty. He thought that perhaps it would be best to rest a little, hoping that all of this was just a bad dream. However, upon arriving at his home, he remembered his mother, and upon trying to find her, he realized that she had also disappeared. At that moment, he looked at the wall clock and felt bewildered, since he had left at 2:45 in the afternoon and the clock had not changed. It was still showing the same time. Elon understood that time had stopped, at least for him, and just in that instant, he felt a soft breeze at his back and saw a girl with golden hair, with large white wings, who appeared before him, dressed in white. She confirmed his thoughts about time stopping, but this only frightened him more, thinking he was having strange visions. The girl assured him that was exactly it, what he was thinking, to which Elon tried to explain to her that she was nothing more than an intruder in his home. But she responded offended that she was not an intruder, but rather a being of light. However, he insisted that she looked like a cosplayer, although he wasn't sure if she really was. But without further ado, the girl introduced herself as Lita, an angel on a divine mission, and her purpose was to inform him that he had been left behind. Lita's words impacted the protagonist, who had always felt like he was lagging behind in every aspect of his life. With his spirits down, he dropped to the ground while she told him that all other humans had been transferred to another dimension, all because of an imminent cataclysm that was approaching the Earth. Taking the appearance of literally a teacher, Lita explained that this cataclysm indicated that the world had reached a new level, having reached the limit of its experience, and that mana was about to be released. Now, humans were in a place destined to acquire the necessary skills to fight and grow, guided by a new status interface. Upon hearing all of this, Elon couldn't help but compare it to a video game, while Lita continued explaining that creatures were appearing that could not be defeated with missiles. It is for this reason that God had stopped time on Earth, giving humanity a chance to adapt and survive these threats. Upon understanding that the others had been sent to a place where they could strengthen their skills, Elon, with frustration, asked what was going to happen to him, to which Lita, looking away, mentioned that a small error had occurred, and although he wished to join the others, the portal was practically closed, and in a sarcastic tone, she told him that his exceptional stealth ability was what allowed him to escape the gods. This caused rage to invade the protagonist, thinking that he had been completely excluded, and he began to stomp his feet and cry, wishing he could go to another world, which Lita tried to explain to him that one of the gods present was benevolent, and that was why she had been sent to help him, since otherwise she wouldn't have intervened. However, Elon continued crying, yearning to learn how to manipulate mana, until little by little he managed to calm down, curled up on the floor while Lita consoled him. She promised him that she would take care of him for 10 years, but the big question was what he could do in that time. Lita suggested that training his body would be the best option, since if he couldn't master mana manipulation, at least he could increase his strength. Upon hearing this, the protagonist was silent for a moment, but soon returned to his tantrum. As time went by, he understood that this would be his new life. On Earth, there were no more options. There were no cities, countries, or continents, and he felt like the only human being in the world. 5 years had passed since the disappearance of humans, and while he was intensely dedicated to the gym, the others were learning to manipulate mana in unknown places. Lita watched Elon train day after day, unable to understand how. He didn't get tired of doing the same routine for 5 years, to which the protagonist told her that he didn't have many alternatives. After all, to which Lita simply nodded. His dedication was evident in his physique, now muscular and worthy of admiration. Lita had to admit that he was more impressive than she had imagined, after having escaped the gaze of the gods. That offended Elon, as if she was implying it was his fault for using that concealment technique. Although she used to laugh at his bad luck, Elon valued having at least some company to talk to, even if it was only once a week. Everything he ate was prepared by Lita, and not only was the food tastier than his mother's, but the plates disappeared as soon as he finished eating. Eventually, the protagonist felt the need to vary his routine, so he became interested in learning martial arts and weapon handling. But Lita wasn't sure how he would do it without an instructor, but he introduced her to the incredible world of the internet. Even though time had stopped, electricity and the internet connection were still working, which continued to surprise Elon, who didn't understand how. The servers remained operational. Lita explained to him that only time had been stopped, an answer that was already beginning to irritate the protagonist. Soon, we see Elon practicing in the surroundings of his house, moving a wooden stick and performing various exercises. Lita was surprised to see the remarkable focus that Elon had, who was learning quickly, just from some videos on the internet. Thus, more than 4 years passed, until Lita decided to offer to train together so that he could improve more quickly. However, the protagonist hesitated at her proposal, since he didn't want to hurt his friend. But she assured him that there was nothing to worry about. So, the protagonist took a deep breath and in an impulse, tried to hit her with his fist. However, Lita was much faster and threw him into the air, revealing her ability as a natural fighter. At least the protagonist understood that he shouldn't fear her, so he decided to back down, and that's how they trained arduously. Finally, they reached the agreed 10 years, and the protagonist prepared for the occasion. And Lita was confident that he could face low-level beasts without problems, and learn to handle mana in the process, while she gave him her last pieces of advice, and congratulated him for his dedication. She warned him that when the great cataclysm arrived, things would change drastically, to which Elon smiled and asked if they would see each other again, but she explained that it depended only on him. It wouldn't be long before the great cataclysm arrived, and people would return to Earth, and the protagonist was excited and anxious about what might happen. In that, Lita began to rise into the sky to leave, but after a few seconds, Elon felt confused when he saw that nothing was happening. Upon witnessing this, Lita mentioned that maybe a small error had occurred, which led the protagonist to fall to the ground, lamenting how many more years he would have to wait. However, he would not give up so easily, and that's how 50 years passed, and people still hadn't returned. He did not stop his training, and his strength continued to increase day after day. At this point, he had lost track of time and could barely remember his mother's face. At that, Lita felt a pang of sadness when she saw Elon set aside his wooden stick, explaining that he was tired. Immediately, she ran to catch up to him, asking him not to give up, but Elon clarified that he would continue training through reading, to which Lita was surprised and grateful that he had not yet fallen into total despair. And that's how the protagonist set aside physical training and began to read during the day, immersing himself in novels, business books, geography, arts, and more, until he read all the books in the library. After that, they decided to learn new languages and explore the world, starting with China, Russia, Brazil, and other places. Elon had devoured all the available books, so it was time to draw up a new plan, to which Lita asked him if he didn't want to take a break, but he replied that he didn't have time, since there were many tasks to complete before the cataclysm, and he wondered how long it would have taken him to read so many books. And that's how centuries and entire centuries passed. Increasingly worried, Lita decided to ask God to bring back the humans before Elon reached his limit. Meanwhile, the protagonist had set himself the goal of learning to hunt and forge weapons. As a first step, he needed to hunt prey, but also he asked Lita if it was okay to hunt certain animals, to which she explained that she would always indicate when it was appropriate to do so, to maintain the balance in nature. At that, when she was about to talk about the monsters, she stopped abruptly, awakening Elon's curiosity. However, he chose to ignore that interruption and continued focused on his work, while Lita reflected on how he always found new activities. 274 years had already passed, but Elon didn't feel discouraged. There was always something new to learn. Along with hunting, fishing was equally essential, although Lita refused to let him hunt creatures in danger of extinction. When they reached 300 years, the protagonist had mastered hunting, but still faced difficulties with forging. The books he had read were not enough to master this art, and the durability of his creations was null, with many of his weapons breaking before they were finished. Finally, after many years of effort, Elon completed his first sword. However, when he was preparing to test it, Lita took it away, declaring that she would keep it as a special memory. Flying away, while he complained that she always left him. Frustrated with her antics, she embraced the sword with joy, while Elon continued creating daggers, small swords, large spears, and axes. Thus, another 50 years passed, and the protagonist had no intention of stopping until he was satisfied with his works. With another century, he managed to forge the perfect spear, which Lita was totally amazed to witness, affirming that it was the best weapon she had seen in her entire existence. It was then that she took the opportunity to explain that with the appearance of mana, new materials would also emerge, more resistant than steel, something that excited Elon. As Lita learned about hunting and forging, the protagonist continued perfecting his martial arts skills without paying attention to the passage of time. But Lita already knew that 1,000 years had passed and began to worry. She knew that Elon would reach his limit at any moment, and she wasn't sure what else she could teach him. But suddenly, she realized that he had never had a partner, which seemed to encourage her. However, she began to hit any object around her. While scolding herself for having those thoughts, she tried to remember that her mission was to help Elon, as God had entrusted her to. But she felt that becoming his partner also could be part of her purpose. So, she decided that she had to do it suddenly. At that moment, the protagonist called her, asking what she was doing, and when she descended quickly, she felt a slight fear that her feelings might have been discovered. However, Elon was only pointing to his sword, that it started to move. The sword shot out of its sheath, and Lita, without thinking, flew after it, fearing losing the first sword that Elon had forged. Immediately, the protagonist called her worried, but instantly realized that his clothes had changed, remembering that they were the same ones he was wearing. When time had stopped, at that moment, everything made sense, and at the same time, Lita managed to catch the sword, but turning around, she realized that the great cataclysm had arrived. At that, the sword began to levitate, and she felt sad for not being able to properly say goodbye to the protagonist. However, at least she carried with her that object full of memories, remembering the 1,000 years they had spent together. Although the most painful thing in their story was that they had never kissed, Elon, for his part, had not anticipated that this would be his farewell, and wondered if he could become a high-ranking being and find Lita again. That's how humanity returned to Earth, in the same place where they had been left, carrying with them clear memories of what they had lived. Likewise, Elon appeared near the school, as if nothing had happened, until a large blue screen appeared in front of each person, showing their names and a title. It was their status window, the same one that Lita had mentioned, that would appear with the cataclysm. Everyone was excited to reunite, checking the statistics they had acquired during those years of training. At that moment, the protagonist couldn't help but feel sad, remembering that his time had passed more slowly. But at least, he knew that everyone was starting over, with statistics set 0. But what impacted him the most was the feeling that no one had noticed his presence. And upon observing his statistics table, he saw that he had an ability called stealth at its maximum level. Although he believed that this ability was responsible for his situation, he couldn't find a way to deactivate it. Frustrated by this, and full of loneliness, he decided to resume his path home, as he had planned 1,000 years ago, while enjoying seeing the people around him. After so long, upon entering his home, he heard his sweet mother's voice calling him. Seeing her in front of him, as if it were a new dawn, he felt immensely happy to be reunited with her again, and recover all his memories, as if nothing had happened. The aroma of the food filled the air, and he could hear the sound of the frying pan as he entered the dining room, where he saw his father reading the newspaper as usual. Suddenly his father mentioned that there was news from the place where he had been, a place that looked the same, where his mother had trained in the past. Although she remembered more about Yamini, her interactions with various women in the neighborhood, and while his parents talked about their experiences, Ilan ate nervously, unable to participate in the conversation. When his mother asked him where he had been, he knew that if he told the truth about having been alone for 1,000 years, he would only worry his parents. So, he chose to respond that he had been in a place without a name. His parents continued to comment on how complicated it was, everything related to humans, opining that only the youngest should have been selected. When Elon was about to intervene, saying that everything was for the balance of the world, he realized that it was too late, since his parents began to question him about what he knew about it. And although he managed to deflect the topic, he couldn't prevent his mother from asking him how his experience had been. They commented that those with skills in mana manipulation could earn good money, which quite disturbed the protagonist. since it was strange to hear his parents talk, as if they were in a video game. Suddenly, at that, Elon called his parents and confessed with seriousness that he couldn't use mana and thought he would receive a sermon, but his mother encouraged him to continue studying with determination, while his father tried to justify that he had inherited bad qualities from him. In the end, the dinner was filled with laughter, and the protagonist allowed himself to enjoy his family's company, as he hadn't done in years. After this, upon arriving at his room, he was surprised to find his spear and couldn't resist the temptation to try it, to check if he still retained his skills. But then a new screen appeared, showing the weapon statistics. However, he wasn't sure if 800 damage points was a lot or a little. For the moment, he sat down to explore social media, where quickly he realized that many people had started blogs about mana. It was exciting to discover new information. After having been trapped for so long on Earth, he learned that upon reaching level 10, he could receive the title of swordsman, archer, and those who reached level 50 would be considered strong and could proceed with the advancement to the second class. Upon reaching level 100, they would move to the third class and become a great resource for the country. In the simulated world, where people had gone to learn about mana, although it was said that no one reached the fourth class, he knew that only those of at least the fourth or fifth class could defeat dragons and behemoths. After reading all this information, Elon dropped into the chair, feeling satisfied with what he had read. He considered that there was enough information and that it was time to return to school, and although he hadn't attended in a long time, he didn't believe that his life had changed drastically, except for the absence of Lita. Suddenly, at that, a voice resonated in his ears, saying that Lolita would be delighted. Upon hearing this, the protagonist turned quickly, trying to locate the source of the voice, and encountered a new intruder, who didn't seem very happy to be called that. This figure introduced herself as Hertha, who had arrived to help him control mana, another angel sent by God. But this time, God had made Hertha smaller, to make things easier for Elon for 10 years, while he adapted to his new reality. However, the protagonist felt somewhat discouraged upon realizing that God wasn't doing this specifically for him, to which the little angel commented that everything had been a consequence of an insistent plea to receive help in his training. The person he had remembered with excitement was Lita, which led him to wonder why they hadn't sent him directly with her, to which Hertha explained to him that the superiors were concerned about a possible bond too close between them, which could prolong their time together, so they decided to choose her instead. Upon hearing this, Elon lowered his gaze a little sadly, while Hertha observed him with suspicion, not understanding why they had sent her when the protagonist could defeat a low-level monster with just one punch. It was at that moment that the angel realized that Lita was not as innocent as she appeared, since she had manipulated the situation to accompany Elon on his adventure. Without any other choice, Hertha pledged to help the protagonist, as God had ordered her, to which he asked her how she could do that, and while Hertha settled on his head, she explained that only by staying there could she activate his mana control, given that she was a superior being in that. He mentioned to himself that before, when he was with Lita, this wasn't possible, because the cataclysm had not yet started, and Hertha estimated that 1 year would be enough for him to master mana. However, Elon was not very happy with the idea of having to carry her on his head all the time, since like anyone, he valued his privacy, especially in intimate moments. But Hertha insisted that as a superior being, she didn't worry about such things. But Elon's biggest concern seemed to be the impossibility of accessing certain files on the web. At one moment, she seemed to read his mind, but didn't change her stance, and only made Elon wish he had Lita back. That's how the protagonist's new life began, with the time to return to classes after 1,000 years and resume his daily routine, although now enduring the little angel on his head, who wouldn't stop moving her legs. In that, Hertha reminded him that he had no reason to worry, since no one else could see her. But Elon asked her to at least stop moving her feet like a madwoman. Suddenly, in that, the protagonist observed some soldiers forming up, and their presence would become part of the new normal, given that the government wanted to be as prepared as possible for the moment when the monsters appeared in the city. However, Elon knew that weapons would not be of great help, just as Lita had explained to him. At the end of this, he returned to classes feeling completely invisible and decided to open his status hoping to be able to deactivate that ability that made him invisible. But Hertha commented that it wasn't a bad skill, which greatly surprised the protagonist. When Hertha clarified that it wasn't exceptional either, several people began to talk about the new abilities they had unlocked, combining small fragments of mana and some combat experience. But to Hertha, that seemed quite pathetic, since she was sure that no one there could match Elon's ability. However, he still harbored resentment for the ability he had received, although on the other hand, he was determined to make the most of it, listening to the conversations of others and collecting additional information. Suddenly in that, he heard talk about an empress, a girl who had become famous on social media, and that, they said, was from the university. Others seemed excited at the possibility of dungeons appearing. When Elon asked Hertha about them, she explained that they were traps designed for monsters, allowing lower-level humans to hunt and level up without putting their lives at risk. Upon hearing this, Elon suggested that perhaps it would be better to leave the monsters there. But Hertha added that the dungeons would disappear after a while, and that there were creatures too intelligent or strong to fall into those traps. There were even some that could disguise themselves, so they should never lower their guard. Suddenly, at that, the professor entered the class, asking for attention to take attendance. And fortunately, they realized that Elon was present. The class focused on recommendations to adapt to the new world they would face, discussing a level in each country and the new laws that had been established to maintain order on Earth. At that instant, the protagonist seemed bored, thinking that none of that made sense and that he was paying too much for a diploma that probably wouldn't be worth anything in the future. After all, surely, the ability to use mana would be a better option and would be worth much more than a piece of paper that proves he has graduated from university. But suddenly Hertha spoke up, suggesting that the best way to learn how to handle mana was by hunting monsters while they were still at a low level. The idea sent a chill through Elon, who doubted his ability, but she reminded him that his good physical condition would allow him to get rid of them without difficulty. Up to level 25, the revelation left the protagonist completely stunned, unable to believe it. And when Hertha proposed that they check it at that instant, the atmosphere in the classroom became disturbed. Looking out the windows, they found giant insects approaching. The fear was palpable on everyone's faces, and it was understandable that this was happening as the tutorial had come to an end and humanity had to face its destiny alone. As Hertha had mentioned, many placed their trust in the government and its protection. But upon seeing the first brave one fall in battle, panic took over everyone, scattering them and leaving Elon alone and confused, not knowing what to do. Hertha understood that the protagonist would prepare to fight and explain the differences between the monsters' armors and their abilities. She also believed that the monsters would not exceed level 20, which shouldn't pose a big problem for him. So, he collected some pieces of wood from the nearby desks, playing with them and surprising Hertha with his skill, improvising a weapon. When Hertha couldn't contain herself anymore and began to praise his crafting ability, Elon gave a slight smile and commented that he used to find it boring, so he decided to learn new skills. Hertha wondered how Lita had convinced everyone that this human was in danger. With just a few tears, the physical and mental effort was evident that Elon had invested during his solitude on Earth, since it wasn't common training, but something extreme, difficult to imagine for a normal human being. That's how the protagonist crafted several rods and placed them in an improvised belt, asking Hertha if his ability would remain active during the fight. In the square, upon learning that it would, he admitted that he preferred to keep his appearance, to which Hertha then suggested that they make a mask. Meanwhile, outside the university, while monsters devastated everything in their path, Dylan found an elevated place and launched himself towards his first victim, instantly reaching level 13 and improving his statistics. Of course, finishing off the opponent meant obtaining their abilities and some mana. Hertha couldn't help but make fun of Elon for enjoying his act, something he admitted, clarifying his desire to hit her soon. Several monsters approached, flying from behind, and despite not knowing how to attack more than one enemy at a time, he got rid of everything without difficulty. Hertha provided strategic advice during the battle, helping Elon to improve quickly. On his status screen, it indicated where the enemy attacks were coming from and when a group of giant insects surrounded him. Due to carelessness, fortunately, he suffered no damage thanks to the strength of his body. Hertha was convinced that Elon had exceeded any human limit and continued observing his performance in the fight. But now, with the protagonist cornered by a swarm of monsters. However, he did not let himself be stopped. He took 2 weapons and, with a fluid movement, cleared his path among the creatures, thus reaching level 6. At that precise moment, a rumble resonated behind him, and turning around, he saw a young woman with sky-blue hair, with a mask that hid her identity. Elon was amazed to see a mage for the first time, but Hertha asked him not to get distracted. The mysterious girl began to attack the approaching monsters, while Elon walked away, wondering if she had gained levels like him, and hoped that all his questions would be resolved upon finishing off the last monster. Meanwhile, from the building, the other students observed, enjoying the spectacle that unfolded before their eyes. When Elon managed to catch his breath, he noticed a brigade approaching and froze, understanding that he no longer needed them. So, without wasting any time, he began to search among the bodies for the mana gems. At that, Hertha realized that the protagonist had good knowledge about hunting, so she helped him locate the mana stone, and that's how Elon followed her instructions, while the others watched in astonishment, not understanding what was happening between him and the young woman. Finally, he managed to get his first mana stone just when a crowd formed around him, taking photos and recording, and he couldn't help but feel embarrassed, but at the same time excited by so much attention. However, the sky-blue-haired girl attracted even more attention by standing in front of him and asking him to do the dirty work for her. Elon was surprised by the request, but she offered him 40% of the reward, and he didn't hesitate to accept. Meanwhile, the other students began to recognize the empress, overflowing with enthusiasm for her presence. At that, while the protagonist worked, he heard several people talking about the girl from before, who commented on her remarkable abilities with light magic. In addition, they also talked about the protagonist and the strange things he did. Hertha also highlighted his stealth abilities that would undoubtedly help him use the mask without being remembered. However, with sadness and resentment, Dylan accelerated his movements, cutting down the giant monsters until he reached the empress to hand over his share. When he believed that his work was done, the military stood in his way, politely asking for a few minutes of his time. But suddenly in that, one of the soldiers was struck by lightning, which not only captivated everyone, but also gave Elon the opportunity to escape. Quickly, he barely took a few steps, and people began to look for him without knowing where he had gone. And although he received praise from everyone, the protagonist felt sad, and Hertha told him that he should be happy for not having been recognized. In the end, Elon went to a park and spread all his belongings on the ground, trying to see if he could make some armor, and that's how, with a bit of intuition, he managed to create some bracers and knee pads. But Hertha interrupted him, explaining that working with that type of material wouldn't be easy, and that he should wait to meet a good teacher. However, Elon smiled proudly and pointed to himself, mentioning that he was the best teacher on all of Earth right now, which made Hertha think about all the lies that Lita had said about this human, and she couldn't help but cover her face and mention Lita's name. Upon hearing this, Elon, very excited, asked if she also missed her, to which she replied that she did indeed. But deep down, she wanted to finish her off for all her lies. At that, she asked him if he knew anything about creating art with mana. But as expected, the protagonist answered that he didn't. However, what Hertha didn't anticipate was Elon grabbing her hands, shaking her with enthusiasm to get more information about that ability. Immediately, Hertha demanded that he let her go, to which he obeyed, apologizing for his lack of control. Being calmer now, she explained that after obtaining some mana crystal, they could create artifacts that conferred special powers to their weapons and armor. Upon hearing this, Elon became very excited and couldn't help but hold her in his hands, wishing that she would teach him said ability. When Hertha gave him a strong blow to the face for his audacity, she sighed deeply, vowing that she would have a long talk with Lita when she returned to heaven, and mentioned to herself that she would tell her very seriously to take good care of her man. But finally, Hertha managed to calm her frustration and set out to explain to Elon how he could start using mana stones. First, she emphasized the importance of having adequate materials, with the crystal being the most essential similar to a magic gem like the heart of a dragon. A blacksmith would start the process by pulverizing the crystal that would then be spread over what they were creating, which is called sealing. This basic principle would improve the characteristics of the equipment, but the true art of mana would provide special abilities, which would be a greater challenge, especially for Elon, who had very limited reserves of mana. Nevertheless, this didn't discourage him, and he insisted that Hertha continue with her explanation, since he wanted to learn through practice. Surprised by his determination, Hertha explained that the person's will was fundamental to grant unique abilities to the equipment. Upon hearing this, Elon understood that he should concentrate on his deepest desires. And now, with renewed fervor, he set to work, managing to create 4 pieces, 2 for his arms and 2 for his knees, just as he had planned. Upon seeing this, Hertha congratulated him for following her instructions and correctly transforming the crystals into powder. And at the same time, a system window announced that he had learned mana craftsmanship. Then the protagonist decided to close his eyes and concentrate, fervently wishing for what he had in mind. But despite the effort, he soon realized that his attempts weren't enough, to which Hertha, in a generous gesture, decided to share a little of her mana. When her hand began to shine intensely, the pieces of crystal expanded in a luminous wave that headed towards the armor he had created. In an instant, Hertha thought that Elon had failed, but he smiled with satisfaction. He put on the armor epically and cleanly cut the chains in 1, 2, 3. That artifact now had the claws of the supreme mantis, becoming something truly unique, something that Hertha had never imagined or seen in her life. Elon, for his part, was eager for things to get interesting again, to which she mentioned that she had contributed a little in this process, but admitted to being impressed, given that the protagonist had managed to create an artifact on his first attempt and thought he would continue experimenting with more things. But it was then that Elon began to run, to prevent someone from discovering that he had broken a swing. Quickly, the news about the brave heroes, apparently students of Sion, who had freed the city from the first wave of beasts and disappeared without a trace, spread throughout the world. That same morning, the protagonist was preparing for a new day at school when suddenly his mother arrived worried, asking him to stay home because there were many monsters outside. Both he and Hertha noticed the ability that floated above the woman's head, which was the ability to worry about her children. And although some might find it funny, for Elon there was nothing funny about it, since he knew that he had to be careful with his mother in order not to be discovered, since her surveillance ability was extreme. So, to calm her down, he promised that he wouldn't get into any fights. It cost him to leave the house, but he finally managed, and while he reflected on that peculiar ability that his mother had acquired, he wondered how useful it could be in a battle. And it was Hertha who compared the situation to penguins, taking care of their young, able to detect the cry of their children anywhere. Elon couldn't help but identify with that, thinking that at least he wouldn't suffer childhood trauma if his mother failed to find him, despite his ability to hide. In that, while they advanced, Hertha mentioned that the government was forming a unit of users with outstanding abilities. However, Elon quickly expressed his disinterest, since moving away from his family or exposing himself to more dangers was not part of his plans. Hertha understood that the protagonist did not want to feel trapped, although she remained intrigued by the figure of the empress that seemed to evoke contempt in him. When Hertha asked him if he liked the empress, Elon strongly denied such a thing. Upon hearing this, she stopped to think about his words, accusing him of having conflicts with his identity. This made the protagonist look at her with resentment, shouting at the top of his lungs that he was a real man. But at that instant, he realized that he was in public and felt tears begin to fall from the shame he had experienced. But returning to the conversation, he affirmed that he only had Lita in mind. However, Hertha continued to insist on what she thought about him, since he had had the beauty of an angel for 1,000 years, and he had done absolutely nothing, to which the protagonist asked her to shut up and expressed his curiosity about the power that the empress seemed to have. Hertha explained that it wasn't something common, since many humans possessed that ability and only needed to discover and train it. At that, Elon gave her a dismissive look, thinking that God had forgotten him. But Hertha knew that he was already special in that aspect. Suddenly, at that, Hertha alerted him about a pack of approximately 70 level wolves, 35 that were approaching, which made the protagonist uneasy at the alarming news, reproaching Hertha for having said that no strong beasts would appear, since the cataclysm was just beginning. But she crossed her arms, speaking with disdain, while explaining that she had already suspected problems with the cataclysm, but as a superior being, she should not show concern to a mortal like him. Upon hearing this, Elon knew that Hertha was different from Lita, since one was a spoiled girl and the other, although silly, was much more mature, and he couldn't help but feel nostalgic for Lita. But in that, Hertha cleared her throat and mentioned that the world was not in a normal state and that she needed his help. However, she told him that she would explain everything on the way and insisted that he start running in the direction that she was pointing him to. Although at that moment, the protagonist felt like a giant robot. She explained that the divine plans were that humans would train for only 10 years. So, she was convinced that the animals could manage during that time. In short, the main problem was that the flow of time on Earth had become distorted after so many years without movement. And so it was that 10 years in other worlds became 1,000 years for Earth. And at that instant, Elon had just realized that he had spent 1,000 years with Lita without noticing, but the constant pulls of his hair made his concentration difficult. While he ran as fast as he could, the Earth had suffered such drastic changes in the species that inhabited it that now they were much stronger than those in other worlds. Seeing the ferocious and giant wolves in front of him, Elon could only think that Earth was doomed, and Hertha, for her part, could only place her hopes on him, while the heavens tried to restore balance urgently. Meanwhile, Elon would have to face the monsters, and his good deeds would be rewarded in time. The motivational talk ended abruptly when the wolves lunged towards the protagonist. However, he dodged that attack by jumping to a nearby roof, and without hesitation jumped in the middle of the wolves, generating a force wave that made them fly and ended the lives of several of them. The experience gained and the abilities obtained soon were reflected in the blue rectangles that appeared, and he reached level 9. Upon witnessing this, Hertha thought that the protagonist must be crazy for not feeling fear in the face of danger, receiving a scolding for being so reckless at the worst time. But suddenly at that, the wolves roared behind them, trying to take advantage of the distraction. However, Elon turned with the weapon in hand and attacked them without thinking. At that, the cries of the crowd began to resound, and some tried to face the wolves, but it seemed they were not up to the task. Fortunately, Elon was there, running among the rubble and getting people out of the way before the monsters could reach them. But suddenly an important notice arrived, and the protagonist barely had time to assimilate what he had witnessed when the crowd began to recognize him as one of those who was in the incident that happened at the University of Sion. However, Elon was disappointed with the public's reaction, since they had given him a ridiculous nickname, while Hertha congratulated him on his new fans. But setting that aside, he continued fighting, explaining to Hertha that those things didn't matter to him at all. However, he noticed that he wasn't leveling up and received a crucial message that indicated that he should choose a class to advance. But at that precise moment, a large wolf appeared, and before he could react, more wolves began to surround him. And Hertha had to intervene, wishing the protagonist luck and informing him that apparently the wolf gave some kind of order. With no other options, Elon attacked with everything, dispatching the wolves one by one and leaving the audience astonished. However, a cry broke the silence, since one of the wolves had trapped a man, which was quite strange, and Hertha informed him that apparently those wolves would have already mastered that tactic before. But despite this, the protagonist didn't feel fear or retreat and knew that he could continue attacking head-on the new enemy, despite the fact that the man was being crushed by the beast's claws. However, Hertha doubted what Elon would decide to do next, but he was more worried about the hubbub of the crowd behind him filming and enjoying the show. Instead of trying to help, Hertha tried to make him reflect on his next action, because he could now be seen as a hero or a villain. But without any more time to lose, the protagonist launched an attack, without caring what people thought, since he only wanted to save that person. And that's how he finished off that wolf that had the man under its power. Then he put his spear aside and faced the furious wolves calmly, since he only wanted to show those monsters that he didn't need a weapon to defeat them. Now, he was using only his fists and the strength he had cultivated for 1,000 years. Together with Lita, meanwhile, Hertha, attentive to every movement, knew that he was not sacrificing his life, and his capacity for judgment was admirable. In a situation where many would have fled, or would have been paralyzed, at that, she mentioned to herself that Lita had raised literally an incredible monster. But after reflecting a little more, she realized that all the merit was only Elon's. The crowd couldn't believe that the protagonist was defeating the wolves with surprising force, since there were no more beasts left. When Elon heard the sound of a weapon reloading behind him, with a voice ordering him to stop, he turned immediately. Before him was a large armed group that was arriving late. Once again, people were quick to complain to them, defending the protagonist who had saved everyone. And the young, blonde-haired woman, who seemed to be the lieutenant, was stunned to confirm that Elon had finished off all those creatures. After this, the area was cordoned off with yellow tape, while Lieutenant Urank approached him to apologize for the previous threats from her colleagues. She explained that they believed there might still be monsters in the area, and that they couldn't lower their guard. It is for this reason that the army was eager to find him and talk a bit with him, but the moment one of her companions began to talk to the lieutenant, Elon disappeared from her sight, stooping to pick up his spear, and approached the wolves to inspect them. When he was thinking of taking the knife of one of them, the lieutenant approached to ask him to listen to her. However, Elon had already rejected the offer, and she supposed that the protagonist had some resentment towards the government or the armed forces, but upon confirming that it wasn't so, she proposed that he join them. However, the protagonist clearly responded with a resounding no, since he didn't want to imagine how irritating it would be to work and depend on others. Hertha also agreed with him, which left her wondering what to do, while the lieutenant sighed sadly for not having managed to convince him due to the uniform. But suddenly, Elon appeared in front of her, awakening in the lieutenant the hope of a positive response, and without wasting time, he asked her if she would be interested in buying some wolf bodies and using the butcher service. Upon hearing this, Lieutenant Urank seemed confused, until her partner explained that using too many bullets ruined the bodies, so she quickly accepted Elon's proposal, although the mana stones were not included in the deal. That's how the soldiers followed the protagonist. Observing how he worked with great precision, the lieutenant recorded a short video and sent it to her superior to report on the work they had just done. When the guy on the other side of the device ordered her to seize the opportunity to take Elon to headquarters, she thought that maybe some of her charms could work. That's how, upon returning, the protagonist told her that he had finished the job and that he preferred to receive his payment in cash. And finally, Elon concluded his task and took out a couple of mana stones, and due to their shape and appearance that resembled chocolate, he dared to ask if they were edible. But Hertha was quick to warn him that that would make him furious, and that in a matter of seconds, he would become a monster dominated by mana. Elon had already considered that it wouldn't be surprising that someone one day would eat one of those stones and cause chaos. At the end of everything, the protagonist received his payment of 37 million in cash, while Hertha prepared to count the money. At that, the lieutenant tried to impress him with her charms. Taking advantage of the time, they had to talk a little. But when the protagonist announced that he was leaving, the blonde was completely stunned. Upon trying to stop him, Elon pressed a hidden button that activated several lights in the sky, distracting the young woman and allowing him to disappear from her sight in an instant. Although Elon was right behind her, Hertha congratulated him for discovering that his stealth ability was reactivated when people got distracted. However, Hertha never found out about the device that he had used, since it was all a secret. That's how the protagonist resumed his way home, while she explained that there was still one day left for the heavens to investigate the anomalies on Earth and try to correct them. But for now, they should keep moving, since there were more monsters somewhere waiting to be faced. It was Elon's second day on Earth after the start of the cataclysm, and he stopped for a moment to check his status table that allowed him to choose his next class. To continue leveling up, the options were totally overwhelming, and quickly, he began to discard those in which stealth was crucial, since he didn't want to become even more invisible. Then he reflected on the need to control and manage his own mana to improve that ability, and decided to ask Hertha for suggestions on what class to choose, to which she delved again into his mind to read the options, and mentioned the classes of launcher and fighter that might suit him best. But at that moment, Elon couldn't help but think of Lita, since it was on her recommendation that he opted for a spear instead of a sword, and although the lessons he received from her were hard and painful, he would always treasure the affection he felt for her. Hertha told him that he was fortunate to have learned from Lita, but received a look of resentment from the protagonist, who remembered that God had left him alone on Earth. Despite this, Hertha encouraged him to choose his class without fear, reminding him that as long as he continued leveling up, he would obtain additional subclasses in the future. Upon hearing this, the protagonist understood that he would not become a substitute, despite what he had seen on the internet, which led Hertha to reprimand him for trusting social media and wasting time. This made Elon suspect that Hertha had experience on the internet and that she had been through something related, but he decided to leave that topic behind and finally made the decision to choose the launcher class. Upon asking him why, Hertha explained that using a weapon would always be more powerful than depending only on his fists, and congratulated him on his choice, thinking about how Elon could also make such right decisions, since it was exactly what she would have recommended to him. Suddenly, at that moment, a notice appeared on the screen that said, "Unique job," and Hertha, upon seeing it, was excited and encouraged the protagonist to accept it, as that meant that he had the opportunity to obtain a unique class, specially designed for him, according to his strength and skills records, and she knew that the protagonist could not pass up such an opportunity. That's how Elon accepted the class immediately, but immediately received notifications about improvements in his statistics, which increased his strength, agility, and the advantages for attacking stealthily. However, he realized that he couldn't learn to control mana and acquire additional abilities. Upon reading this again, he understood that he had misinterpreted the name, since it wasn't Blood Launcher, but Diffuse Launcher. Hertha was also very bewildered, since she had read the same thing as him, and as a superior being, her pride prevented her from finding the right words to explain the error. And while the protagonist was bursting with anger about what he wanted to say to the angel, he felt a strange energy run through his body and noticed that something had changed. He explained that his body had strengthened upon choosing his first class, accepting that there was no turning back. The protagonist continued to review his status, looking for something that would motivate him. But upon seeing that, not even his title of loner had changed, his spirits fell again. But in that, Hertha asked him if he had received any active ability, and upon learning that he hadn't, she tried to lift his spirits, assuring him that he would receive something much better later on, although Elon felt a mixture of happiness and excitement for the mysteries that the future held for him. Hertha was very sure that in the end, when he reached his third job change, he would receive an impressive ability, and mentioned to herself that every day her adventure seemed more interesting with this human. After thinking this, she pulled his hair again so that he would move quickly, and also she explained that she had taken care of his suitcase of money with a little magic. On the way, she mentioned that there were more representatives in the heavens, like the one who would participate in the hunt, so he should hurry if he wanted to get better rewards. In the end, the protagonist couldn't help but wonder if the empress would also be one of them, to which Hertha replied that it was very likely. Meanwhile, Elon expressed how impressive the angels seemed to him for their mission and their world. It was then that Hertha alerted him about what was in front of him, since right in front of a group of terrified people, there was a huge bear that was roaring aggressively. Without hesitation, the protagonist grabbed his spear ready to attack, but suddenly, many stones began to fall from the buildings when he pointed towards the military ships that began to launch missiles against the monster, which only served to enrage that beast even more. That's how the soldiers approached, and at the sound of the fire signal, they began to shoot, obtaining a similar result to that of the planes. The bear continued to advance with barely a scratch, while the soldiers panicked, believing that the help they had requested would never arrive, or at least that's what they thought, while the protagonist, for his part, mentioned that human constructions were very fragile, and remembered that humans had just returned to Earth, so there was still much to improve. Suddenly, at that, a great roar of the bear interrupted the protagonist's thoughts, which he immediately put the mask back on, prepared to face the monster. And without hesitation, he charged it with all his strength. He took a few seconds to decide his next movement, and when he was ready, his class was activated automatically, revealing that his stealth would be crucial in the battle. With a single jump, He exceeded the height of the bear without it noticing and didn't attack it in the air, but waited to land to complete his cycle. The other soldiers were slow to realize that Elon was turning towards them, warning them to move away if they wanted to survive. Although they hesitated a bit, the proximity of the bear's claws that almost reached some citizens led them to obey the protagonist. The bear was now focusing its attention on Elon, but no matter how hard it tried to attack in the air, the protagonist counterattacked with his fierce spear in one of its paws. Meanwhile, Hertha was entertained by the situation and was amused by the roller coaster she was experiencing. Although the bear didn't make her laugh, that distraction reminded the protagonist that his stealth had returned, which gave him a new opportunity. And he thought about his spear and his renewed strength, remembering an advice from Lita during his training, to which she told him not to concentrate all his weight on a single point of his body. However, a little fear invaded him, fearing to hurt someone, but he remembered that he hadn't even touched Lita, so there was no reason to worry. Then he closed his eyes to concentrate, just as she had taught him, and no matter how much he tried to land a blow, he couldn't, which Lita, laughing nervously, congratulated him for having managed to cut at least a strand of her hair. Those memories filled him with great affection, and he applied her advice, delivering a precise blow to a vital part of the bear that immediately stopped moving. Upon moving away, he saw the monster fall, feeling satisfied with his achievement. That's how Elon received abilities related to the critical hit, which made Hertha happy, who had observed that those 3 attacks were enough to finish off that beast, and proud of his spear. The protagonist celebrated his victory, although he soon noticed that the bear was beginning to shrink, returning to its original form. Upon exploring the animal, he realized that a car stopped abruptly, and turning around, he immediately saw several men get out of the vehicle, while Hertha explained to him that they were part of a group of users with outstanding abilities. Immediately, the young men introduced themselves to the soldiers, who were left speechless. Upon learning that the monster had already been defeated, some joked about the situation, complaining about not having received donations, while a dark-haired boy with light eyes asked what had happened. Meanwhile, at that, Elon, who was checking the place, heard them calling him and was encouraged to think that they had recognized him. But Hertha quickly ruined his enthusiasm by clarifying that they were only doing it because of the mask. The other boys also identified him, although some felt annoyed by his presence. Feeling that they were inferior, others approached Elon, seeking advice on how to become stronger, but he didn't want to share anything. While some considered withdrawing, the protagonist envied the extroversion they had. But in that, one of them, visibly excited, introduced himself as Dujon. Upon extending his hand, Dylan noticed something strange, but since he had never made contact with anyone, he didn't know what to do, to which Dujon praised his strength, telling him that one day he would surpass him, and that he wanted him to remember his name. Then the protagonist asked him what he had done to achieve it, to which Dujon explained that his friends watched over him all the time, and that one day he would become better. Upon hearing this, the protagonist thought that that was a boring reason, and confronted him, asking why he needed a rival to compare himself to, instead of simply improving. Silently and very irritated, he told him that he stressed others, instead of focusing on becoming his best version. And although the protagonist didn't stop complaining and yelling at him, he realized that none of that was real, and that it was all in his imagination. At that, Hertha noticed the discomfort on Elon's expression when she realized that Dujon had left. However, the protagonist assured her that he was okay, something that the angel never believed. After a few moments, the protagonist had collected a large amount of skin, ideal for stopping bullets. And just when he was thinking about withdrawing, a new lieutenant appeared, calling him with evident nervousness, to which the protagonist quickly affirmed that the skin was his. But the man clarified to him that he only wanted to make him a different offer. With a brief explanation, he asked him to download an application to locate more monsters. But without wanting to listen anymore, the protagonist decided that it was best to leave. In that, one of the worried soldiers approached his superior, questioning why they were letting him go so easily, instead of forcing him to cooperate, to which the lieutenant explained that her captain would not accept that option, and that the smartest thing to do was to leave the protagonist alone, since the most likely thing was that he would turn against them. But while they were arguing, Hertha and Elon heard the whole conversation, and the protagonist hurried to move away, pointing out that they were overestimating him. He thought that if they forced him, he could end up destroying it just for not following orders, and agreed that the lieutenant had made the best decision by maintaining communication and working towards a common goal independently. But suddenly, at that, the protagonist took out his cell phone and saw 3 new marks on the map. Upon asking Hertha what they should do, she encouraged him to go after them and face them. The adventure was not complicated, and that was reflected in the protagonist's statistics, who complained about not having leveled up since he was only at level 24. Hertha explained to him that those 3 monsters were much weaker than the previous one, and after choosing his first class, he needed to accumulate experience to advance. She also recommended that he check what he had obtained, from materials to the money from the guys, to whom he had also sold things. Upon checking, the protagonist realized that he now had 10 million in cash, and was eager to see what he could buy. But Hertha mentioned that they could discover his identity if he squandered all the money, since he had been the only one who had received that amount. So to reassure him, she told him that for this time, she would erase the memories of the officers, so that they would have no worries. This left our protagonist completely amazed, who mentioned that the power of the angels was amazing. The next morning, Elon woke up with surprising news from the system, which informed him that the broken connection with the other world had been restored, and now everyone could return to complete missions and receive rewards. But unfortunately, our protagonist, who had never been there, so he was still trapped on Earth, and feared being left alone again. So, he tried to find an explanation for the recent news, and Hertha suggested that the monsters on Earth were very strong, and they needed solutions. She speculated that people could gain experience in the other world with this plan, which caused Elon to scream in despair and rage, feeling abandoned again on Earth, since he considered that he had no luck, which Hertha tried to console him about, telling him that it shouldn't affect him so much, since he should be used to the situation. But Elon wondered what his mother would say upon learning that he wouldn't be able to go to the other world, to which Hertha opined that if he affirmed that there was nothing to learn there, then there wouldn't be any problem. However, the protagonist didn't think this was a good idea. Upon perceiving his frustration, Hertha changed her approach. She became serious and apologized, admits that she can't do anything to change his situation. At this moment, Elon, still upset, asks if this means that he will never have the opportunity to explore the other world. Hertha assures him that it is not completely off the table. If Elon reaches the status of a superior being, not only will he be able to go to the other world, but he will even receive a VIP pass to heaven. Upon hearing about heaven, Elon's mind immediately focuses on Lita. He wonders if he will ever be able to be with her again. Hertha observes them from a distance. Frowning, she thinks, wow, these two are like long-distance lovebirds. And then a thought comes to her. Am I Cupid? That single idea makes her boil with rage. Scolds Elon, telling him to train like a beast, become a superior being, and reunite with his supposed love renewed. With determination, Elon approaches his parents to discuss the next steps. Meanwhile, the news is chaos, transmitting the disorder that is spreading throughout the world. As the path to the other world reopens, the army intervenes, presenting a plan to divide the burden. Half of the people will head to the other world to train, while the rest will protect the territory of the Earth. The other world has basically become a dungeon where people can level up and train. Elon drinks his warm milk and prepares to present the idea to his parents. He tells them that they should go to the other world to increase their power levels. His father dismisses it, saying that it is a waste of time. He spent 10 years in the other world and didn't even achieve a second-class awakening. But Elon insists, arguing that the other world is basically an amusement park, now with the most difficult monsters already eliminated, which makes it the ideal time to train safely. His father, clearly moved by Elon's persistence, smiles at him warmly and assures him that he will do his best, promising to be in touch soon. And thus his father teleports directly to the other world. Later during dinner, she congratulates Elon for standing firm, but warns him to be careful and not to become reckless. Elon minimizes it, saying that he has no power and is not a hunter. But his mother, looking at him, lets him know that she is aware of him. The masked man, who is causing a stir on television, is obviously him. Upon hearing this, Elon is stunned. His mother, with a warm and kind smile, tempts him, asking if he really thought that she wouldn't recognize him. Even with that rare mask, she was able to tell from afar. that the masked man was her son. Elon is surprised, thinking that his mother's ability must be a legendary ability of another level. He thinks that not even God could detect him with my stealth, but she managed to do it instantly. And then he feels overwhelmed by emotion. A tear begins to fall as he thinks, only there is one person in the entire universe who really sees me for who I am. His mother reassures him, telling him that she doesn't know how he became so powerful, but that he must take care of himself and avoid doing silly things. She adds with that characteristic mom tone that people can be much more terrifying than monsters, so he must remain calm. For the first time in years, Elon feels a warm and comforting vibe that envelopes him. Even her scolding sounds different, as if he were at home, but all good things come to an end. She says her last goodbye to him, gives him that mom look, and heads to the other world. And just like that, suddenly, Elon is alone again, looking at the pile of dishes. Elon sighs and murmurs, "Great, now I also have to do all this boring housework." While he complains, Hertha appears again, telling him to get his act together, because she is heading to heaven, and he is about to receive a reward of another level for all the things he has done on Earth. The scene changes, and Elon enters his secret basement. This wasn't just any basement, but his own dream factory, built with all the money he earned killing monsters. Equipped with the best of the best, he shouts, "Genius in action." Elon's eyes shine as he murmurs, "What could I do here?" But before he can begin, Hertha appears again. Elon, a little bewildered, asks her how she returned so quickly from heaven. What really surprises him is her appearance. Now she is the size of a human. Elon's jaw almost drops. "What the hell? How did you grow so suddenly?" he exclaims. Hertha smiles sideways and explains with a flick of her wrist that was her real form. All the time, she had only shrunk herself before. To make it easier, with an elegant movement, Hertha extends her hand and asks for his. Elon, feeling a little uncomfortable, gives her his hand. Her touch feels cool but soft as silk. Suddenly, the system emits a sound and announces that Elon's mission as an agent of heaven has ended. As Elon surpassed everyone on Earth, he is granted a special reward, the eternal flame. At this, the protagonist's jaw drops. Just at the moment when the furnace in his workshop begins to shine intensely, the flames burst out, and before his eyes begin to come to life on their own, with eyes, face, and all, Elon's mind runs at 100 kilometers per hour. What is this crazy gift? He thinks while a smile spreads across his face. Elon knows that this is just the beginning of something epic. He is excited to see the flame and thinks about all the incredible things he can create with it. "This is exactly what I wanted." However, Hertha interrupts, pointing out that Lita sent this gift for Elon. From heaven, annoyed, Hertha complains about how Lita always caused her problems when she was in heaven. Upon hearing Lita's name, Elon is distracted thinking about her and saying, "Lita always knows what I want." Then Elon receives a mission, as the gods made a mistake and left him on Earth, while everyone else went to the other world. Now they expect him to create dungeons on Earth. Confused and angry, Elon quickly realizes that he was just being given work and can't help but shout and curse the god who left him alone for 1,000 years. Hertha, sweating like crazy, nervously explains that the monsters on Earth have developed resistance to the power of the gods, and the protag he is the only one capable of solving this disaster. Surprised by Hertha's sudden praise, Elon finds it suspicious as hell. Why the hell is she praising me? He wonders, shouting again. Elon accuses Hertha of flattering him, so that he does ridiculously difficult things. Hertha, avoiding his gaze, remains silent, annoyed. Elon demands to know what will happen if he refuses. Hertha responds calmly, but with a sly tone, that if Elon does not create the dungeons, the monsters will destroy the Earth, and it will all be his fault. Still annoyed, Elon murmurs about how useless these so-called gods are. Then Hertha takes out a large quantity of precious materials and high-level tools for Elon to use. Seeing all the shiny tools and resources, Elon's jaw drops and his mouth almost waters. Excited, he starts to take them, but Hertha intervenes immediately, saying that he is only borrowing them. They are not his. Annoyed but intrigued, Elon asks, how the hell is he supposed to make the dungeons? Hertha takes out a blueprint and explains the process. Elon needs to fabricate a magic tool that attracts monsters and turns an area into a dungeon. Helen knows that this task will be a headache, but the rewards sound attractive. Hertha promises that he will receive the best rewards. While Helen begins to work, Hertha watches him like a hawk. She is surprised at how good Helen is at blacksmithing. For a moment, she wonders if she made a mistake, recommending the Lancer class instead of blacksmithing. If Helen had chosen blacksmithing, maybe he would have created weapons capable of kicking the gods' asses. Helen shapes the tool carefully, focused like a laser with sweat dripping, hoping he doesn't mess it up. Seeing his dedication, Hertha realizes that this is how Lita must have felt, watching Helen for 1,000 years. For a brief moment, a smile escapes her, but she quickly shakes it off, muttering to herself, No, I'm not going to fall in love with this fool. Finally, Helen finishes the tool, raising it triumphantly ready. Vita Hertha is surprised by the result. Dylan has reached the maximum level of blacksmithing, earning the impressive title of Legend Maker. Helen stood there, holding the base for the dungeon, with an attitude of owning the place. Meanwhile, Hertha was stunned, scratching her head, wondering how the hell Helen had managed to finish so fast. With a smile, Helen joked, What's wrong, Hertha? Did you sneak some wine from heaven? It's been 6 hours already. Hertha, surprised, hadn't realized how much time had passed. While watching Helen work, reluctantly, Helen handed her the dungeon base. Hertha, trying to appear indifferent, murmured, Well, Helen barely passed, but deep down she knew he had done great. She quickly added that she would summon her fellow angels for mana crafting. Upon hearing fellow angels, Helen's heart almost leaped out of his chest. Maybe, just maybe, Lita would appear. But Hertha, with her usual ability to ruin the mood, gave the bad news. Lita wouldn't come. Then Hertha summoned 3 angels. When they appeared, Helen's jaw almost dropped. Not only were they angels, but impressively beautiful beings who didn't seem real. Upon arrival, the angels looked at Helen as if he were some kind of circus show, saying that they couldn't believe such a lowly human had created a dungeon so quickly. Helen's pride took a hit, and he felt a wave of irritation. But when he took a good look at their impressive faces, his anger calmed down a bit. Looking at Hertha, he realized something, now that she was at her full size. She was truly beautiful. He shook his head, muttering that he hadn't noticed it before. Hertha clapped, snapping him out of his thoughts and telling him to focus. Furthermore, she shouted at him that she knew perfectly well that he had the willpower to finish the dungeon. The angels surrounded Helen, placing their hands on him to share mana. Helen immediately felt as if he was being run over by a truck, but he gritted his teeth, staying focused on creating the dungeon. The white-haired angel watched, clearly impressed, saying he couldn't believe that a human could handle their mana. The black-haired angel, on the other hand, seemed annoyed, muttering that his ego had been hurt, seeing how well Helen was doing. Meanwhile, the green-haired angel seemed to find Helen's effort fascinating. Suddenly, a bright light burst, signaling the completion of the dungeon. The angels were shocked, amazed at how Helen had achieved it on his first try. Furthermore, the dungeon had alpha and beta options, rare characteristics that usually didn't appear so early. Hertha explained that these options were super rare and added even more power to the dungeon. The angels reluctantly praised Helen, clearly impressed. Despite their initial doubts, Helen, trying not to look too conceited, joined them to prepare the dungeon. They moved to a nearby mountain, where Hertha threw the dungeon core into the air. Helen tilted his head, confused, when suddenly it disappeared. Moments later, the ground began to shake, and Helen saw monsters heading directly towards the dungeon. Seeing how the creatures were rushing to their doom, Helen couldn't help but laugh. Poor guys, they have no idea what awaits them, he thought, as he thought about how God had abandoned the earth. For thousands of years, Helen clenched his fists. He wasn't going to sit around complaining. He was ready to improve his game. With a serious face, he clenched his fists so hard that his knuckles turned white. Helen swore to himself that he would get stronger. So strong that not even God could control him. This wasn't for anyone else. Not for praise or recognition, just for one thing, to reclaim his own freedom. The next day, it is reported that dungeons have appeared in various parts of the world, attracting monsters. Helen wonders how his parents are doing. Hertha praises Helen's hard work, but he, shrugging and downplaying the compliment, states that he needs to create more dungeons and wonders why the angels have already left. Hertha explains that the angels need to recharge their mana and return to heaven. Helen mentions that there are other angels like Lita. Hertha tells him that Lita is busy working because of him and won't be able to see him for a while. Later, Helen returns to his workshop, and Hertha notices the materials he has collected. She offers to reward him for his dedication. With a wave of her hand, she dries and sterilizes the monster skins instantly. Helen smiles, excited that he can now make boots and gloves. After some time, Helen successfully creates a pair of leather gloves and boots. Then he begins to craft simple leather armor. Hertha watches him with a soft smile, enjoying how Helen immerses himself in his work with such passion. A day passes and Helen finishes the simple armor. However, he doesn't stop there. He reinforces the armor using monster bones, resulting in superior quality armor with a unique additional function, spikes protruding like those of a hedgehog. Hertha remembers the sword, Hidden Mantis, and asks why Helen is creating such unusual things. Helen, with a conceited look, states that it is every man's dream. Hertha rolls her eyes and calls his reasoning nonsense. They notice leftover monster bones, and Helen comes up with another idea. He makes a butcher knife with the bones, and even uses a skull to create a mask. Helen puts on the mask, the gloves, the boots, and the armor. Hertha is in shock, seeing how the mask has made Helen's presence even weaker than before, as if he had disappeared into thin air. Right at that moment, a loud explosion resonates in the distance. A monster appears, and Hertha can't believe that it hasn't been trapped in a dungeon yet. How is that possible? She murmurs in disbelief. Just then they hear a loud explosion. A monster appears, and Hertha can't believe that it hasn't been trapped yet in the dungeon. With a smile, Helen hopes it's not stronger than the grizzly bear. He murmurs that if it is, he will have to create new armor. Hearing this, Hertha loses her cool and shouts. Helen is really worried about making new armor instead of fighting a beast that can destroy a city. Helen ignores her, takes out his spear, and adjusts it. Suddenly, the weapon gains a noticeable increase in its attack power. Helen smiles and boldly asks Hertha if he can keep the celestial tools. But Hertha stops him with a sharp no. They head to the place where chaos reigns, while a huge leopard destroys everything in its path. The army is completely overwhelmed. Dylan notices some awakened ones around, but they're out of his league. Most of the great fighters are in the other world, resting with the elves. Without losing time, Dylan puts on the mask and launches into action. Hertha shouts a warning. This leopard is stronger than the bear. A tank shoots at the leopard, but the attack bounces off as if it were nothing. The angry leopard grabs the tank and tries to bite it like an appetizer. Dylan, without missing an opportunity, jumps and stabs the leopard with the spear directly in the eye, achieving a clean critical hit. The crowd, seeing this, is relieved and excited that their only hero, whom they nicknamed Usain Bolt, has not gone to the other world. The furious leopard throws the tank aside, but Helen doesn't let it escape with precision. He opens the tank and takes out 2 soldiers trapped inside. They fall to the ground, breathing heavily, and thank Helen, telling him that he is their hero. Suddenly, Helen stops feeling something strange. He shouts at the soldiers to get out of there. The leopard approaches, fixing its fierce gaze on Helen, to which Hertha in panic says, "It has you now." But Helen, with his characteristic arrogant smile, tells her to be calm, since he has everything under control. He tightly grips the spear, ready to face. The army and others, awakened ones, enter their attacks on the leopard, while it is distracted. Suddenly, a lightning bolt strikes the leopard's wounded eye. A helicopter arrives, and from it comes an amazingly beautiful woman. The spectators couldn't believe that the empress was so beautiful. All the time, the leopard charges at Helen, but he dodges, jumping into the air. Taking advantage of this, the leopard tries to attack him in the air. The crowd below shudders, fearing he might die. But to their surprise, Helen rolls in the air like a hedgehog and lands unharmed. Feeling proud, Helen smiles, but Hertha quickly comments on how ridiculous he looks. She sarcastically compares him to something Lita would make fun of, and Helen grumbles, not wanting to imagine Lita seeing him that way. Meanwhile, the monster arrives and rams a building with its head, but Helen manages to escape just in time. Helen counterattacks, jumping on the leopard with his spiked boots and giving a critical blow. With his spear, he continues attacking nonstop, while others focus on the leopard's legs. Suddenly, Hertha warns him, telling him to hurry, since that thing is evolving to Class 3. And suddenly, tentacles begin to sprout from the leopard's wounded eye, and Hertha confirms that the mutation is underway. Right at that moment, another lightning bolt hits the leopard, revealing the Empress watching from above. Hillen cuts the regenerating tentacles, but they keep coming back. The Empress offers to enhance Hillen's abilities, and although surprised, he accepts. She jumps out of the helicopter, landing gracefully in front of him. Her calm voice conveys authority as she declares, "My life is in your hands now." With her powers, Hillen's stats increase by 50%, and he receives a lightning upgrade. Although she warns him about the side effect, his stats will drop by 50% once the buff ends. Now full of energy, Hillen goes on the offensive, hitting the leopard with a mixture of critical and lightning attacks. The Empress urged him to finish quickly, implying that the army might launch missiles. If he didn't, Hillen worried about his nearby workshop, attacked with all his might with one last devastating blow. The leopard was destroyed, earning Hillen experience points. And a level up, Hertha praised Hillen, but her satisfaction quickly faded when she realized that the leopard's hide was ruined, ruining her hopes of creating leopard armor. Hertha asked, sarcastically, if that was really the most important thing. Hillen noticed that the army was having trouble dismantling the corpse and offered to help, on the condition that they discussed how to divide the loot. The Empress suggested dividing it 60-20-20, 60% for Hillen, 20% for the army, and 20% for the other hunters. Reluctantly, the army accepted. Hillen's spirits lifted and he climbed onto the corpse, recovering a mana stone, which the Empress considered a fair dividend for his work. However, complaints began to arise from the hunters and some military personnel who argued that the mana stone should be shared, since they had all risked their lives. Hertha scoffed, saying that they were despicable beings, always ready to complain and accuse. After being rescued, Hillen, annoyed, agreed to give up the mana stone. Hertha, disappointed, asked why he was backing down. But Hillen, with a sly smile, shared his plan. He remembered his mother's advice. If words don't solve a problem, there is always a final solution. The fishy had flexed her Sigma Mom muscles, leaving Hillen astonished. Dylan dramatically threw the mana stone back onto the leopard's corpse and shouted angrily, "Take it, but only if you beat me for it. And the next time another monster appears, I will wait until everyone is dead before acting, so no one will complain, since everyone will be in heaven." Hearing this, the others quickly retreated, muttering that Hillen should keep the mana stone. The Empress requested her share of the dismantling, promising to pay Hillen extra for his effort. Then she asked for a car to transport the materials, revealing her wealth. Dylan, however, felt a wave of disgust when the same hunters who had accused him earlier were now begging him shamelessly to help them dismember the leopard. He gave a sigh of irritation, holding himself back from vomiting. Then Hillen offered to help dismantle the leopard, but only in exchange for a large payment. The others murmured and complained, but realizing they had no other choice, they reluctantly accepted Hillen's conditions. Later, chaos erupted when everyone started fighting over the loot, leaving Hillen completely uninterested. With an exasperated sigh, he tried to leave quietly, avoiding unnecessary drama. However, the Empress stopped him. She praised his ability for stealth, calling it extraordinary, and suggested forming a group with him. Hillen flatly refused, making it clear that he worked better alone, unperturbed. She smiled and said she planned to stay on Earth because it was not weak enough to go to the other world, to train. With a sly smile, she handed him her business card and walked away. Hillen looked at the name Jean on the card and thought it was refreshing that she wasn't overly persistent while walking with Hertha. Both noticed movement in the leopard's corpse, but Hillen ignored it, muttering, "It's not my problem." Later, Hillen fully immersed himself in his creation mode, creating more traps of destruction. Hertha suddenly felt something ominous. A tertiary class monster was forming on Earth. Panic began to seep into her voice as she asked what could be happening. Hillen, unperturbed, calmly suggested asking God, to which this earned Hertha an irritated look, who scolded him for his relaxed attitude, reminding him that the Earth is in real danger. The monster's evolution is progressing at an alarming rate, unbalancing the situation in a dangerous way. Hillen shrugged and said directly that worrying won't change anything, and wondered aloud how other countries are handling the crisis. Hertha revealed that rapid evolution is unique to Korea, which immediately made Hillen suspect that his traps, commonly called dungeons, might be the trigger. Hertha was surprised, realizing that Hillen's traps are so effective that the monsters feel threatened enough to evolve rapidly. In other worlds, monsters evolve inside dungeons through crossbreeding. Outside of them, they grow by eating humans, but those trapped in dungeons suffer from stunted growth. Hillen smiled proudly at how powerful his traps are. With new motivation, he decided to make even more traps. Hertha watched him in amazement, wondering how much Hillen really enjoys creating and gaining experience. Reflecting on Hillen's 1,000 years of solitude, she realized that he is hungry for new experiences. To her surprise, she realized she was beginning to sympathize with him, a simple inferior being. What surprised her even more was that she didn't hate this feeling, trying to shake off that strange feeling. Hertha told Hillen to continue getting stronger and gaining more experience. Hillen confidently replied that he would. His unwavering determination. That night, the angels returned to help complete more traps before leaving to create more dungeons. Hillen hoped his traps would be effective, and Hertha reassured him, telling him not to worry. Hillen thanked her, leaving Hertha puzzled by his sudden gratitude. The next morning, Hillen woke up and discovered that his rest ability had reached the maximum level. Hertha was astonished and exclaimed that it was an SS rank ability. She asked how he had achieved such a feat. Hillen, with an arrogant smile, explained that he researched how to sleep comfortably for a millennium. Hertha couldn't believe what she was hearing. She was jealous but surprised. She dismissed it as an ability, merely for resting well. However, Hillen perceived that there was something more. Adjusting his glasses, Hertha began to explain the evolution of abilities. She explained that the evolution of abilities is an achievement that opens new paths to power. In simple terms, once an ability evolves, it becomes disproportionately powerful. Hertha pointed out that Hillen currently has touted spear abilities, rest and stealth, all of which are ready to evolve. However, she warned him that evolving the touted spear and spear arts would be extremely difficult due to the strict requirements, while his stealth ability, being passive, cannot evolve. Then she encouraged Hillen to review the requirements of the rest ability. Hillen takes a look and freezes. To evolve it, he needs 500 monster hearts and 500 liters of trowel blood. Seeing this, Hillen complains loudly, saying that this is almost impossible to do. Hertha smiles smugly and tells Hillen to review the requirements of his other abilities. Reluctantly, he does, only to discover that evolving his taijutsu and spear arts requires him to kill 500 class 3 monsters, all in one hit. Furthermore, he must also defeat a class 4 monster. Are you kidding me? Hillen shouts, his soul leaving his body. Hertha, trying not to laugh, calmly explains to him that although the rest of the abilities might seem ridiculous, now his future potential is divine, and it is the easiest to improve compared to his other abilities. However, Hertha begins to worry about Hillen's leveling speed. It's growing slower, and he doesn't have mana yet. The only reason Hillen is overpowered is because of his martial arts. She warns that if he doesn't evolve soon, other humans could surpass him. But then, a chilling thought crosses Hertha's mind. If Hillen ever learns mana, he could become a being capable of ruling everyone. The creators of the Akashic Records. The mere idea makes her skin crawl, but also fills her with awe. From now on, all Hertha can do is watch him, witness his journey, his growth, and secretly enjoy every moment. Later, Hillen asks Hertha where he can find those class 3 monsters. Hertha, while casually chewing on fried snakes, explains to him that those monsters will only appear on Earth once the mana is activated. Right at that moment, the news on television reports that the leopard's body has disappeared, along with the people who were sharing the loot. The class 2 leopard also disappeared, along with the people who were skinning it. Some speculate that a dungeon might have swallowed them. However, Hillen realizes that there might be another monster, is 99.9% sure that the leopard was dead. She admits there is a 0.01% chance that the leopard was pregnant. Hillen remembers briefly noticing a black figure on the screen, and regrets not finishing the butchery. However, Hertha quickly reminds him that it was the fault of the greedy people. The people were killed and are now in the monster's stomach, all because of their own greed. Hertha says it clearly, unimpressed, but Hillen still feels responsible. A reaction that Hertha did not expect. She can't understand why Hillen is affected by this. They realize that the leopard must have acted wildly to hide her cub. Hertha feels guilty for not having considered the possibilities, especially because the baby inherited the stealth skill. No one noticed that it was hiding, and people had spent too much time arguing, giving the baby enough time to be born and later attack those who were near it. Hillen begins to worry, and Hertha confirms that it could be the tertiary class 3 monster that she had sensed before. Hillen turns off the television and starts planning. He refuses to lose to another stealth user. Hertha reminds him that it is impossible for a monster to excel in all stats, so it might have a weaker defense or strength. Suddenly considers asking for help and decides to call someone. Hertha stops him immediately, warning him that revealing his identity could be dangerous. Determined, Hillen uses a public phone to call Jean. When Jean answers, and the embarrassed protagonist introduces himself as Usain Bolt. Hearing his nickname, Jean gets excited, but Hillen from the other side feels like crying from shyness. Jean quickly realizes that Hillen is too embarrassed to talk because of his nickname. Then the conversation takes a serious turn. Hillen informs Jean about the news, explaining that there is a strong monster with stealth abilities. Jean listens attentively and agrees that the situation is really dangerous. The call ends, and Hillen is impressed by how quickly Jean understood the situation. Her connections with the army and the government seem even more impressive. Hillen then begins to prepare for his mission, gathering material that he collected from the leopard monster. For the next battle, Hertha wonders what Hillen plans to do, since she feels that the steel spear he already has is enough. Hillen, with a smile, tells her just watch. However, Hertha, clearly annoyed, begins to pull her hair in frustration. Hillen laughs and states that she knows nothing about his genius. Using the leopard bones, Hillen creates huge posts. Hertha is still confused, thinks Hillen is making a necklace for a giant, but the satisfied Hillen corrects her, saying you know nothing, which this irritates her even more. Hertha then realizes that Hillen wasn't making spears, but a harpoon. Hillen explains that a harpoon can pull the prey back once it hits it, has great penetration, and is difficult to remove once it is embedded. To make it even better, Hillen uses leopard skin to create ropes. Hertha is still skeptical, asks him if he is secretly using mana to create so fast. Hillen shakes his head and clarifies that if he had mana, he wouldn't bother crafting weapons. He would simply hit the monster with his own hands. Once finished, Hillen proudly shows his hunter harpoons that he crafted with mana stones. Hertha is still in shock, finds it evil how Hillen is using the mother's materials to end her cub. Hillen explains that his survival is non-negotiable, justifying the use of the stones. He finishes crafting, and Hertha notes that the harpoons have high attack power and an increase in critical hits. How does he do this? Hertha wonders, with a headache, witnessing the impossible once again. Lita, Elon contacte Jean and warns her not to act recklessly. Jean, worried, asks why the baby monster is still lurking in the area. Hillen explains that it is seeking revenge for the death of its mother. Jean, intrigued, asks if Hillen has a plan. Hillen responds confidently that he will make the monster unable to use its stealth abilities. Jean wishes him luck as Hillen heads toward the monster's territory. With Hertha upon arrival, Hillen laughs, feeling the arrogance of the monster for relying on its stealth abilities. Hillen drives the posts in and makes noise, deliberately to attract the monster, but it does not attack yet. Hertha, watching closely, comments that Hillen's stealth ability is much more superior to the leopard's. His traps are completely hidden, making him a natural assassin in her eyes. Just then, Hillen notices something. The leopard emerges from its stealth, ready to attack. With a determined expression, Hillen prepares to move. The leopard was acting like John Cena, thinking that no one could see it. But Hillen's sharp eyes caught its movements. The leopard growls as it prowls around, trying to intimidate Hillen. He notices a 20% damage bonus when attacking while in stealth and using a spear. Without wasting time, He throws the harpoon with all his strength, aiming directly at the leopard. The harpoon hits the mark, and the leopard roars in pain. Even though its size is only half that of its mother, it was clearly a tertiary class monster. Helen had the damage bonus, but the harpoon only managed to get halfway in. Hertha, observing closely, explains that the leopard's low resistance and defense are due to its specialization in stealth abilities. The leopard, now enraged, focuses on Helen and charges at him. Helen quickly retreats, dodging the attack just in time. The leopard realizes it can't advance any further, restrained by the harpoon and the post, and struggles against the strong rope. Helen doesn't waste time, picks up another harpoon and throws it with precision, achieving a critical hit. The leopard responds, and during the clash, Helen's arm guards break. Recoiling, he shouts in frustration at his broken equipment, but recovers quickly, realizing that he can repair them. Later, Hertha, unimpressed, comments on how such ridiculous arm guards manage to help him survive. The leopard attacks again, but Helen dodges skillfully, noting that the attack was part of a monster's ability. This realization surprises him, making him think about the unpredictable nature of future monsters. Preparing another set of spears and harpoons, Helen stays focused. The leopard tries to flee, but the embedded harpoons and the strong ropes hold it back. Frustrated, the leopard begins to cut the ropes with its claws. Hertha tells urgently to Helen to use the remaining harpoons to prevent it from escaping. Helen, determined, throws another harpoon, stabbing the leopard's paw and preventing it from using its long-range attacks. Hertha, observing Helen's precision, praises his javelin-throwing skills. Helen, smiling, tells Hertha to call him Ismail, referencing Mavi Dick's harpoon. Hertha, rolling her eyes, warns him not to lower his guard. Right at that moment, Jin's voice resonates in the area, asking if that is the target monster for subjugation. She arrives riding in a military vehicle and without hesitation unleashes her lightning magic. The leopard is hit and paralyzed momentarily. Unable to move, Jin gets out of the vehicle, elegant and confident, asking Helen how he managed to capture the monster. Helen, a bit embarrassed, responds that it's not a question that someone who just casts lightning should ask. He realizes that Jin is not an ordinary hunter. Her status as a first-class hunter is clear. However, the leopard, refusing to fall, gets up again. Helen and Jin prepare for the second round, their determination burning as they face the beast together. Helen sets up another post and prepares to throw the harpoon. The leopard tries to move again, but Helen throws the harpoon to its other front paw. The leopard roars in pain, and Helen shouts at Jin to attack when she can. Jin can attack with powerful lightning magic, but she needs 2 minutes before she can launch it. Helen hopes Jin will warn him when she is ready to launch the attack. Meanwhile, the leopard fights against the ties, and Hertha notes that it still has mana. The leopard stares at Helen, and he recognizes it immediately. Those were the same determined eyes he had seen before. While hunting wild animals, they show the monster's strong desire to survive. The leopard is hit again, but counterattacks with its long-range ability. It misses, but Helen notes that the attack has increased in strength. Hertha explains what the mineralization bleeding bonus is. Jin launches a lightning attack, but it does not reach the leopard. The leopard retaliates and attacks Jin and her driver, but they manage to dodge it. However, it's clear that attacking the leopard in this situation will be difficult. The leopard roars loudly as it struggles to free itself from the harpoons. Helen admits that its determination is impressive, to the point that the leopard is willing to tear its own paws apart to survive. Helen realizes that they desperately need Jim's attack. He jumps to the roof of the vehicle and asks Jin for a stronger attack. The driver takes out a weapon, but Jin wonders if it will be enough. Helen insists that it is not time to doubt. Jin asks if Helen knows how to use a weapon, and he confidently responds that he can use most weapons on Earth. Helen advances with the weapon in hand, and Jin realizes that he wasn't lying. Hertha knows that Helen has hesitated before because the leopard's hide would be ruined, but now Helen has no other choice, since martial arts or spears will no longer work against the leopard. Suddenly, the leopard pulls out a stick that was stuck in its foot. Helen is astonished at how resilient the ropes are. Jin watches closely, waiting for her moment. The leopard is dangerously close to tearing off the remaining posts. Helen fires a shot that hits the leopard's eye, spraying blood. Wow. Helen reaches the maximum level in shooting skills. He shoots again, and Jean is amazed at the amount of damage the rifle is causing. Hertha knows that a rifle should not be able to damage a tertiary class monster, but Helen's shooting ability has made the weapon incredibly powerful. Helen continues to shoot and shouts, asking for Jin's magic. Jean counts down while charging her attack. Dylan drops the rifle and takes a harpoon as the leopard frees itself from its restraints and jumps towards him. At the exact moment when the leopard attacks, Jean unleashes a powerful lightning magic that hits with all its force. The lightning magic impacts the leopard, and Jean feels the backlash for using stronger magic. Just when they thought it had worked, Helen realizes that it's not over yet. The leopard activates its stealth ability and disappears from Jin's sight. However, the leopard's stealth ability is useless against the king of stealth, Helen. Helen jumps on the leopard and stabs the harpoon in its eye. Wounded, the monster falls and trembles in pain. Jean is amazed that Helen can see through the stealth. Helen takes out the remaining ropes and ties up the leopard, maximizing another of his abilities. Hertha wonders why he hasn't killed it yet, but Helen seems to have something else in mind. Jean arrives and is surprised by Helen's sudden appearance. Helen suggests forming a group so that they can share the experience points from the leopard. Jean, somewhat confused, agrees to form the group. The system confirms the formation of the group, and Helen gets excited. New windows appear, showing the status of the other members of the group. Jean acts confused, noting that Helen is behaving as if it were the first time he's formed a group. Embarrassed, Helen makes up an excuse, and Hertha can only sigh. Helen approaches the dying leopard, says goodbye to it, and delivers the final blow. He earns almost 3 million experience points, reaching level 36, and receives the title of first to get the record of a level 102 shadow leopard killer. Hertha comments on the large level jump, and Helen feels dizzy from the sudden surge of points. Jean seems to be feeling the same. Hertha explains that, despite the huge experience gain, Helen could not reach level 40 due to his unique class, which leaves him somewhat disappointed. As Helen's headache disappears, he solemnly approaches the leopard's corpse and apologizes for damaging it, leaving Hertha a little uncomfortable. Helen explains that armor, made from a tertiary class monster, is a rare item. Then he continues gutting the monster. While he does so, Helen discovers a mana stone in the leopard's head. Hertha exclaims how lucky Helen is to obtain mana from both the mother and the leopard cub. The mana stone is as big as Helen's fist. Suddenly Helen remembers that the mana stone from a tertiary class monster is one of the requirements for evolving his ability of rest. But he is not the only one who contributed to subduing the monster. Jean states that she earned 1.5 million experience points, since points are distributed according to the contributions of the hunters. Dylan comments on how helpful Jean was, and she, feeling happy, asks for his name. She jokes, telling him that she will continue to call him by his embarrassing nickname, Usain Bolt, if he doesn't tell her his name. Dylan immediately shares his name. Jean smiles and tells him to keep the mana stone, asking for only half of the corpse if Dylan guts it. Dylan hesitates, wondering if that is fair, but Jean assures him that it is. Then she tells him that the most important job on Earth at this moment is that of a butcher craftsman. It makes no sense to kill a monster if you can't process its corpse. Jean also praises Helen's unmatched skills in gut, since in the last monster incursion, he had done an impeccable job. Helen guts the monster's corpse, while Jean calls for reinforcements to come. Hertha notes that Jean has many connections and suggests that Helen maintain a good relationship with her. However, for someone like Helen, getting closer to people seems an impossible task. He finds it painful being a loner. Helen finishes gutting the monster, and Jean orders her team to move the processed materials. She thanks Helen for eliminating the monster before it caused more damage. Helen also expresses his gratitude for her help. However, Jean suggests that she won't form a group with Helen in the future, since she believes he is too weak and would only drag her down. Dylan feels heartbroken, and his introverted side starts to overthink, blaming himself for the things he could have done wrong. Jean sighs and admits that she lacks a lot of things. She acknowledges the big difference in her strength. Helen sighs in relief, realizing that it was not his fault. Jean vows to become stronger and promises to ask again, Helen to be her partner in the future. Helen responds that he will think about it when the time comes. Jean finds Helen's logic admirable and thanks him again. Their group is dissolved, leaving Helen with mixed feelings. Jean is called by her team, but suddenly remembers something. She turns around and asks Helen for his phone number. Helen hesitates, not knowing if he should share it. Jean smiles and promises not to reveal his identity or his number to anyone. The masked man is too stunned to speak, doubting if he can trust her. After remembering everything that happened, Helen makes a decision. He agrees to give her his contact information and cheerfully writes his number on her phone. Jean thanks him again and leaves. Helen can't believe that a woman has asked for his number. First, Hertha finds Helen pathetic and doesn't hide her disdain. Helen feels offended and they both start arguing. Despite their fight, Helen can't help but feel proud of his success in defeating a tertiary class monster. His menacing smile reveals his satisfaction. However, Helen's new problem is trowel blood, which is not yet available on Earth. He feels frustrated for not being able to visit the other world. Hertha reassures him, explaining that the mana concentration on Earth is increasing and that trowels will appear soon. Helen wonders if trowel blood has healing properties, since it is related to his rest ability. Hertha confirms it, but warns that Helen will need poison resistance to use it effectively. The next requirement worries Helen even more. He needs to kill a second-class monster, asleep in one hit, which means strengthening his weapon. Helen asks Hertha for more materials, but she refuses immediately, reminding him that they have already provided him with tools. Helen considers using the harpoons again and starts thinking while examining the muscles and tendons. The eternal flame surprises them by devouring the muscle, and the tendons suddenly transform. Helen gets excited, quickly extinguishes the flame, and picks up the tendon. Feeling a spark of inspiration for his next steps, Helen gets excited about the new material. He finds it fascinating and calls it the giant's rubber band. Hertha wonders how Helen plans to use it, since the material is elastic, durable, fire-resistant to blows and to water. Suddenly, Helen declares that he wants to make a bazooka with it. He enthusiastically explains to Hertha how it looks and works, boasting that its attack power will be top-notch and fierce. Helen pours more tendons into the eternal flame, laughing menacingly at his newly discovered source of power. Hertha has a headache while observing the maniac behind her. She can't believe how Helen, after reading everything, from science fiction to romance, for more than 1,000 years, is now molding his ideas into the art of creation. Despite her annoyance, Hertha gets excited about Helen's future projects. Helen begins to design his new weapon, decides to use the leopard's teeth as bullets, and wants to improve them with a mana stone. Although Hertha insists they're already strong enough, Helen justifies his plan, thinking that he might need such a weapon to fight against another tertiary class monster. In the future, Helen promises to find another mana stone for his pile bunker and finishes building it quickly. When testing it, he realizes that the rubber band is more resistant than he expected. While struggling to stretch the band, he jokes about calling his mother for help. It takes him 2 seconds longer than anticipated to load it to the first level. He realizes that it would be difficult to use it in a real fight and mutters sarcastically that next time he will call his ancestors for help. Using the power of his ancestors, he tries again, but struggles even more with the following levels. A stats window appears, showing that the pile bunker has advanced options, but Hertha considers it impractical for small monsters or regular use. Helen decides to reserve it for giant monsters and passes immediately to designing weapons for smaller enemies. Hertha gets angry and demands that Helen take a break, but Helen, now a workaholic, ignores her completely. The scene changes as time passes. Helen manages to create numerous traps of destruction, raising his manacraft skill to 24. The angels, observing from behind, are impressed by the quality of the traps. Hertha reminds Helen that initially he was to create 11 more dungeons, but now it seems that only 8 will be necessary due to the high-quality dungeons he has built. The wider range and higher quality of the traps could overflow the current traps on Earth, causing the monsters to leave the current traps to go to Helen's. This could lead to the appearance of new monsters, some of which might destroy the traps by themselves. Helen trembles in fear, not wanting to face another tertiary class monster. He knows he was only able to defeat Shadow Leopard because of his stealth and needed help to do so. He admits that he cannot take down a Class 4 monster alone. However, Hertha advises Hillen to reduce the number of traps to avoid an overflow. Meanwhile, Kuda, the white-haired angel, seems annoyed by Hillen's activities, complains about how chaotic everything is on Earth, and orders Hertha to manage that lowly human. Hearing his lack of respect, Hertha's face turns furious. She sharply corrects him, declaring that she is not there to manage or control Hillen, only to observe him and assist him. Hertha adds that she was never ordered to restrict Hillen's abilities. Asura dismissively calls her a useless angel and orders that a human must know his place. Hertha explodes with rage and draws her sword, pointing it at Sua. She warns him, telling him to mind his own business or else she will eliminate him with it. It becomes clear to everyone watching that Sua is a complete fool. Sua looks at the sword in frustration. Dylan panics because it's the first time he's seen Hertha so angry. The other angels intervene, supporting Hertha and calling Kuda a foolish angel, telling him to mind his own business and focus on his duties. They try to calm Hertha, and Nick claims that Suda didn't mean it. Sujun realizes that the angels are not so different from humans, despite being superior beings. Hertha can also act like a normal person. The three angels leave, while receiving Hillen's traps of destruction. He and Hertha watch them leave. Hertha then apologizes for showing that side of her, but Hillen finds it refreshing and interesting to see angels express emotions. Hertha explains that the angels have long forgotten such trivial feelings. Hillen wonders why Kuda is still like that. Hertha explains what it is because Hillen is great. His talents are enough to make even an angel feel jealous. Hillen is surprised by the compliment and gets shy at Hertha's high estimation of him. Hertha thinks Hillen underestimates himself, although she believes it could be a good quality if he ever thought too highly of his talents. He might have challenged God. Hertha doesn't even want to entertain that idea. She decides to move on and speaks out loud, confusing Hillen with her comments. Now it's time to discuss the rewards. Hillen insists that he only wants material goods, but Hertha exclaims that he might change his mind once he hears what she has to say. A new dungeon on Earth contains a new type of metal, and Hertha reveals its location. Hillen gets excited and wants to know right away. The next day, Hillen goes outside and notices that there is no one around. Hertha asks him if he remembers the time when he was alone on Earth. Hillen finds it different. Now there are people like him fighting monsters. Hillen realizes that he is no longer alone, and Hertha feels proud. For some reason, Hillen walks deeper into a forest and notices something shine. He reaches the entrance of a dungeon and feels happy that the dungeon with the new metal is in Korea. Given the state of global emergency, traveling by boat or plane is impossible. Hillen even thought in building an airplane. Hertha wonders if this is the beginning of something. Hillen touches the entrance of the dungeon, but it restricts entry to anyone below level 50. Hillen complains to Hertha, saying that he is still at level 36. Hertha smiles and asks Hillen who he thinks he is. He quickly calls her a rude angel and an intruder. Hertha casually passes her hand, lifting the dungeon entry restriction. She tells Hillen to enter, and he suddenly finds her useful. Hertha angrily comments that she is a great help, although Hillen rarely recognizes it. Hillen touches the portal and enters the dungeon. As soon as he enters, Hillen gets scared. This is the first time he sees the interior of a dungeon. Hertha reminds Hillen that he is the one who created the dungeons. Then he puts on his glasses and begins a quick examination. He asks how the new monsters appear on Earth. Hillen mentions that the concentration of mana is increasing, which is only the basic condition. Hertha uses examples such as weevils in rice, cockroaches, and fungi, explaining how they thrive under the right conditions. Similarly, new monsters will appear if the environment is perfect, like the dungeons that Hillen has created. Hillen wonders why Hertha is mentioning this. She reveals that the new metal is not something that should be ignored. Instead, it can be extracted from the hearts of monsters. Hillen feels betrayed realizing that he will not be able to extract the metal. The miner, already equipped with a helmet, complains loudly, questioning why Hertha didn't mention it before. Hillen is surprised upon learning that the hearts of monsters are the new metal he was looking for. He complains, asking why Hertha didn't report it before. Hertha smiles smugly and responds that she never said they would extract the metal, only that they would obtain it. Now Hillen is speechless, He had been so excited to extract it that he even prepared a load of mining equipment. Even Hertha is surprised, seeing the numerous items that Hillen brought with him, including a three-dimensional magic bag that he obtained as a reward from a mission, a bag with space expansion magic. Although the space of the bag is expanded, its weight remains the same. However, thanks to Hillen's excellent build, carrying a few dozen tons is not a problem for him. Meanwhile, Hillen observes the walls full of countless gems, sighing in disappointment, realizing that all those gems are from monsters. Hertha asks him why he seems so dejected, and Hillen admits that he imagined himself extracting the walls, excited, and then being surprised and ambushed by monsters. Unfortunately, Hertha ruined the surprise, and now he can't experience something new. Hillen takes out a huge red infernal axe that he crafted the day before. He plans to use it against the metal monsters, since his spear might not be as effective. This heavy battle axe that he forged earlier is another of his rare creations. Hertha marvels at Hillen's ability to create rare items, but Hillen regrets that he can only use the axe once before making a better weapon with the new metals. He tests the axe on one of the monsters, a metal heart embedded in the wall, and with a single blow, the monster dies to Hillen's surprise. He gains a level, and his blunt weapons technique maxes out immediately. Inside the monster, Hillen finds a shiny piece, the heart of the metal. Hertha explains that the metal hearts reinforce their bodies with mana if they feel danger, which makes them difficult to hunt. Most parties require two individuals, one to distract and the other to attack. However, with Hillen's stealth skill, he can seek it out alone. Hillen takes the heart and happily heads to find more monsters. However, after only a few hours, the dungeon becomes boring for him. The environment is monotonous, and every monster dies in one blow. Hertha points out that he is the only one who would find this normal. Later, Hillen encounters a new enemy, a large metal heart of level 74. He takes out his pile bunker and uses it. With a single blow, the monster explodes into pieces. However, the bullet of the pile bunker is destroyed, making Hillen wonder if he should start making case shots. Instead of the monster's corpse, he obtains a large heart. Hertha explains that the metal heart, the final form of the metal hearts, has the greatest durability in the world. However, it will not appear in this dungeon, since it is a class quarry monster. Against all odds, they find another large metal heart this time. Instead of using his pile bunker and knops for his huge hammer, happily continues hunting, gaining levels and collecting materials. During the next few days, before clearing the entire dungeon, Hertha suggests leaving, since they can return later if they need more metal. Outside the dungeon, Hillen is greeted by other angels, who report that the installation of dungeons on Earth has been completed. With the dungeons activating all over the world, the monsters are disappearing, and once trapped inside the dungeons, civilization begins to regain stability. Korea, Japan, China, and other Asian nations are finally finding peace. Little by little, on the other hand, there were reports that missions from the other world were decreasing. ERT explained to Hillen that they were limiting the rewards of the missions until people returned to Earth to help get rid of the monsters here. Meanwhile, Hillen finished his blacksmithing. Thanks to his effort and skills, he managed to create a full plate armor with not only 2 additional upgrades, but 3. It was almost impossible for an object without mana to have 3 options. But thanks to the title of creator of Myths SEO, June achieved the impossible. Hertha advised him not to sell these objects, as it would be dangerous if people discovered his abilities. SEO, June also manufactured a bunch of weapons and retired his old spear, which he fed to the eternal fire. Every time he fed it, the flame became stronger. After a long day of blacksmithing, Hillen returned home and found that his parents had also arrived from the other world. He happily joined them for dinner. While his dad mentioned that he had to go to work, his dad explained that one of his co-workers had resigned to become a hunter, and since he couldn't do the same, he needed to work to avoid being fired before leaving. His dad took a defensive shirt out of his bag and gave it to him. He also gave a defensive shirt to his mom, but she seemed more interested in the bag itself. The next day, Hillen returned to his warehouse, only to find that his workshop had changed drastically from one day to another. Hertha explained that it was his reward for creating the trap of destruction. But that was not all. Also, they gave him a deadly poison resistance log, which would allow him to survive even the poison of class quarry monsters. With that realization, Hela knew that he could now hunt trolls. As for his last reward, Hertha shared with him the location of a troll's dungeon. It was in the United States of America. Hillen thought he had already used his rifle and a steamroller, so in his opinion, he was already a U.S. citizen. Hillen headed to the airport to go to the United States. It was his first time flying, so he was very excited. Hertha shouted at him, reminding him that traveling required a passport and visa, but Hillen only smiled, announcing that he was going to sneak into the country, using his stealth skill. This was the perfect moment to use his abilities to the max. Using his stealth skill, Hillen walked straight into the airport, passed by the stewardess, and entered the plane. He settled into a business class seat, and even stole a soda from a passing cart. The stewardess was right next to him, but didn't notice anything. Dylan noticed a fighter jet following him outside the plane, but Hertha explained using a guide that it was piloting a skills user to protect the plane in case monsters appeared in the sky. To get to Arizona, where the troll's dungeon was, they had a stopover in Los Angeles. However, when the plane landed at the Los Angeles airport, monsters attacked. Hertha warned Hillen that this was probably an overflow. An overflow occurs when a trap of destruction explodes, resulting in mutant monsters. These monsters were much stronger than normal ones, and the energy of the trap had transformed part of the airport into a rocky desert. Hillen equipped himself with his armor ready for the next fight. Hertha explained that the mutants from an overflow could interact with other dungeons, which could cause chaos in other places. Right at that moment, the airport wall exploded, and humans came running out, screaming, fleeing from the monsters. A security guard fired his gun at a monster, Flame Lizard, but the lizard threw him like he was a fly. That was a fat and nasty lizard. While Hillen felt that the lizard wasn't that strong, Hertha explained that it was a Class 2 monster and warned him to be careful. Ignoring her warning, Hillen pulled out his new spear and destroyed the fire lizard with a single blow. The fleeing passengers noticed that someone was fighting and started cheering him on. Meanwhile, another fire lizard threw a fireball that Hillen dodged. Unfortunately, he ran into another fireball from a second lizard, and the fireball hit him. People yelled thinking that Hillen had died, but fortunately, his armor blocked the attack and he came out unscathed. Hillen shouted at the lizards to attack him again, but the lizards were already fighting, believing that he had died. Even the passengers believed he was dead, despite him standing next to them, shouting loudly. The human fighters and the fire lizards continued their battle, while Hillen observed and waited. Hillen observes how the lizard men were overwhelming the hunters, who barely defended themselves. When one of the armored humans was about to be hit by a fireball, Hillen chillingly stands in and blocks the attack, raising his aura and melee saving the human. Then, he launches forward and stabs the fire lizard right in the head. The fire lizard recognizes Hillen as a strong warrior and begins to clamor to eat its record. Hillen doesn't understand what this record is and annoyed, slashes the lizard man in one cut. Suddenly all the lizard men point at Hillen, shouting that a strong warrior is there and that eating him would make them evolve. It seems that monsters have their own mission and level system, which even surprises Kjum, the human with armor that Hillen saved earlier. Thanks him, and Hillen recognizes his voice as feminine. Deciding to act with disdain, he advises her to stay safe as he walks away. She starts blushing seeing Hillen as her hero. Meanwhile, Hillen feels satisfied and handsome, even though his face is covered by a mask. Hillen continues his fire lizard massacre, leveling up thanks to the experience points. After killing more than 30 lizards, he reaches level 44. Hillen comments that the fire lizards keep appearing, so Hertha advises him to kill the leader first. She explains that the leader is the main cause of the environmental changes, and that without killing it, the monsters will continue to appear. Dylan thanks her for the advice, but it is easier said than done, especially when he is surrounded by an army of fire lizards, and he is forced to fight against all of them. Hillen uses his spear to deflect a fireball back into another group, creating a fire explosion. This opens a gap that allows Hillen to jump and stab the lizards. With his spear, the other hunters watch in awe. They find it difficult to fight a lizard in a group, but Hillen is facing them all by himself. Meanwhile, The girlfriend of the red-armored hunter looks at him with disdain, clearly unimpressed. Ignoring this, Helen jumps over the horde of lizards and examines the surroundings. In the distance, he sees the leader, a huge gray fire lizard surrounded by subordinates. Using his momentum, Helen crashes into the monsters, killing more than 10 lizards and leveling up to 45. However, the leader disappears out of nowhere. A red-armored hunter shouts at Helen in Korean to move, claiming that there is a lizard right behind him. The hunter hopes Helen will die, but Helen hits the lizard until he kills it. While Helen is distracted, the leader throws heavy rocks towards him, causing the ground to crack, and that sharp stones emerge too. Incredible speed. However, Helen rides the rocks that protrude, thanks to a skill he learned while surfing in the ocean. Unfortunately, the rocks explode, making everyone think that Helen has died again. Jumps out of the explosion, and Lezo, annoyed with the people who constantly talk about his death. Then he takes out his newly created bazooka that he had already loaded. Up to level 4, the leader of the lizards, ready for a final showdown, does not realize that Helen's bazooka, made of level 3 black leopard material, has a much faster firing speed. Before the fat lizard can react, Helen fires the bazooka point blank at its head. With a loud blast, the leader lizard faints. The other lizards rush to help their boss, and the humans slowly begin to be overwhelmed. But this time Helen takes out another weapon, this time a huge short and wide sword, through the lizards. Meanwhile, the lizard leader, realizing how strong Helen is, uses his last forces for a final attack. The whole area begins to shake. The rocks begin to crack, and a huge stone thorn emerges, forming a tower. The ground was breaking, while Helen and the lizard boss faced off. Just when the leader lizard began to mock Helen, calling him an insignificant insect that would die, Helen attacked first with his weapon, instantly closing the boss's mouth and killing him. Upon dying, the boss received around 2 million experience points. A system window appeared, showing that Helen had obtained the records of a fire lizard of level 91. Helen thought aloud about how these creatures, despite being lower level than black leopard, could change entire environments. He considered it absurd, but recognized that the mutant monsters were much stronger than their levels indicated. For Helen, it was a shame that such power existed. Afterwards, Helen ascended to join the others. Everyone looked at him with admiration, filling him with praise. A young man approached to see if Helen was hurt, while a girl offered to heal him if needed. Helen recognized them as the Korean couple that he had noticed earlier. Hertha commented in a playful tone that Helen seemed jealous of the couple. Helen stared at her, responding that she wouldn't understand what it was to be an outsider. Acting calmly, Helen assured the couple that he was fine and told them to take care of the remaining monsters, emphasizing that even one escaping could cause big problems. The girl then asked her boyfriend if Helen had completed his 3rd class change. The boy replied that he hadn't heard of anyone reaching that level. Zulfast, she commented that Helen seemed stronger than her appa. Clearly, Helen had won a fan. Meanwhile, Helen continued hunting the remaining lizards, each death adding experience points. While fighting, he muttered that no matter how much he worked to kill them all, probably one would escape. He imagined a scenario in which a lizard survivor watched his plane depart before running into the forest, causing another mutant incident on Earth. Hearing this, Hertha made a face dismissing it as ridiculous. Helen shouted determined that he wouldn't let that happen. He noticed 2 lizards fleeing at 11 o'clock. He jumped into action and killed them quickly, gaining significant experience points. After making sure that all the lizards were dead, Helen asked if the area was clear. Hertha questioned how Helen planned to store so many monster corpses. Now Helen could store the contents of the bag without limitations, but it became so heavy that he couldn't lift it. Falling to the ground, Helen broke the ground under his feet and demanded that Hertha find a way to handle the weight of the bag. System windows showed that Helen had completed the mission. Another window declared him as the most successful participant and announced a special reward. Hertha recited a spell and summoned 2 angels to help her. Together they created a mana tool to reduce the weight of the bag. The modified bag became a 3-dimensional bag, allowing Helen to carry its contents effortlessly. Helen really liked this bag and thanked Hertha while holding it. Helen noticed that the angel with green hair, who looked like a mother, was smiling at him. She revealed that she had been watching him and explained that she was the angel of the Korean girl that Helen had recently met. Helen, surprised, learned from Hertha that angels protect humans, rare and talented, for the good of the earth. The angel introduced the girl as Huna and explained that helping her would also benefit Helen. Since Huna had been blessed by the goddess of beauty, Hertha quickly warned the angel not to reveal Helen's abilities, Huna emphasizing that her information should remain confidential. The angel, in a playful tone, asked Hertha if she was in love with Helen, adding that Lita would get very angry if she did. This made Hertha angry, and the two began to argue in a funny way. Finally, the angels left, although the mother angel told Helen to be nice to Huna. Then Hertha asked Helen if he planned to help Huna, curious to know if Helen liked the girl. Helen scoffed, dismissing the idea and declaring that he was not interested in her. It seemed that Helen had really become a man, completely oblivious to the angels. Hertha stepped aside and gave Helen the rest of his mission rewards. Among them, there was an ability called superhuman strength that did not require mana to use it. Helen appreciated the reward and thought it was a monster ability, but he liked it equally. The scene changed to the inside of a plane. Yuna and her companion were sitting with Yuna looking bewildered. She mentioned that her angel had told her that Helen was on the plane, but she didn't see him anywhere. Her companion advised her to lower her voice and fasten her seatbelt to avoid attracting attention. Then Yuna and her friend began to speculate about what kind of person he could be. Helen wondered if he was a muscular and manly man, or if he had a more feminine attitude. Her friend didn't like that Yuna was talking about that masked guy right in front of him. Yuna, noticing his irritation, asked him why he was jealous without them knowing. Helen was sitting directly behind them, listening to everything. He commented to himself that he would probably continue to meet them. The plane took off and the scene changed to a dense forest, where Helen was cooking for Yuna and the boy. They loved his food, and Yuna, excited, asked if he could make more for her. Next to them was a huge dead scorpion that they had killed together and were now eating. Helen was visibly annoyed for having to work with them. He began to narrate how he had arrived at this situation, saying that to explain that they had to go back in time. The scene was rolled back to a few days before, showing Helen in front of a huge portal. The two looked at the entrance surprised. Unable to comprehend what kind of entrance it was, Hertha approached to examine it, and commented that she had heard that it was supposed to be a normal troll's dungeon, but after carefully inspecting it nervously, concluded that it was a very rare phenomenon. Two traps of destruction must have overlapped, causing two dungeons to combine into one huge one. She warned Helen, explaining that a dungeon like that probably contained monsters besides trolls, so he should be very careful. Suddenly a notification appeared. Entry level limit 50. As Helen entered the dungeon, he asked Hertha what she exactly meant by that. Hertha clarified that there were two field bosses in that dungeon, making it a mountain dungeon. Venturing inside, they saw a fat troll lying down to rest, and immediately fell asleep on the spot. Seeing the troll's lazy behavior, Helen exclaimed that it had fallen asleep only 3 seconds after lying down. "Is that a rest skill?" asked Hertha. She explained that trolls usually had rest abilities that were the secret behind their regeneration capabilities. Helen then asked if this was the reason why troll blood was needed to evolve the rest ability. Without waiting for an answer, Helen, with an evil smile, stealthily approached the sleeping troll, smiling mischievously. And that's how, without hesitation, he eliminated the troll in a matter of seconds. Because of this, Helen gained a large amount of experience points, and a system window suddenly appeared saying that he had obtained the records of a troll from the highlands of level 72. Another window showed his progress. A monster heart collected from 500, and only 3L of troll blood collected from the 500 needed. Finding this task relatively easy, Helen set out excitedly to massacre more poor trolls.